The Royal Volunteer Coastal Patrol monitors the airwaves off Newcastle these days, but back in 1942, about the time the city was shelled by a Japanese submarine, a young John Bredon was a wireless operator at the Shepherd's Hill Observation Post, listening out for wartime traffic.
Just to keep in contact with what was happening on the coast.
John is 84 now and returned with his family today to the Clifftop Bunker, which was one of a range of military sites in the East End, collectively known as HMAS Maitland. The Navy wanted John to christen its new ship, but because he isn't allowed to fly, he's sending his daughter Jacqueline to Perth to do the honours.
It's recognition for our area, for the Hunter Valley. Maitland's a beautiful city, a busy city, a growing city, and it's also recognition for the time that Maitland was stationed in Newcastle, HMAS Maitland, and did so much during the war for the safety of our country.
Very proud. I know she'll do a good job.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
For 11-year-old Tyrone, playground basketball is usually a sport he's been forced to sit out. But today it was his classmates who were struggling to keep up as he whirled around the court courtesy of his shiny new wheels.
He's just loving it, so it's a great thing for him.
The new $10,000 motorised wheelchair is a touching act of generosity from staff at the Newcastle Permanent Building Society, who raised the funds by sacrificing a portion of their weekly salary.
It's so wonderful that they saw that and we were able to assist.
We're really grateful that they could help us out because Tyrone wouldn't be able to afford to pay for it himself without them, so we're very, very grateful.
A student at Hillsborough's Glendon Special School, Tyrone suffers from cerebral palsy and has struggled to manoeuvre his regular wheelchair through the school grounds. But he now has mobility at the touch of a finger, something his occupational therapist says he's revelling in.
It will allow him to access his home, his school and his community with so much more independence, and it'll just give him, his quality of life will be increased immensely.
Christy Carter, NBN News.
Women across the nation are embracing pole dancing with both hands and hot shorts.
Just stepping right out of their comfort zone, rising to the challenge and meeting the challenges and having a ball in the process.
The art cum sport is a very tough workout and participants should expect bruises and aching arms and abs post-class.
It is a form of exercise to help build your strength, flexibility.
But women are using it for more than physical fitness, it's also a self-confidence booster.
I'm a mum of two and I really wanted to do something outside that role. I think it'll make me feel sexier and just feel better in myself and more the fun side of it really.
Install a pole at home, practice for 3 years and maybe you could do something like this.
Wow. So I suppose that's kind of advanced.
The moves aren't too hard to pick up and let's face it, there's plenty of places you can hone your skills.
I've also told girls to stop at bus stops, make sure no one's watching, pull themselves up, carry on to the next bus stop.
Jessica Phillis, NBN News. It's incredible to think that something so beautiful was nearly extinct just 25 years ago.
They're very human-friendly, as some people call them. They're easy to work with, easy to train, and they're spectacular. Wherever you take them, you get a little interest in them.
Frisian horses are still rare in Australia. There are only around 200 registered animals, but strict breeding standards mean those few mares and stallions are of the highest calibre. Every 3 years, a team of Dutch judges from the worldwide stud book for Frisian horses visits Australia to inspect and classify our steeds.
We want a really noble, with a good expression in the head, with a long neck, good in conformation.
The World Frisian Horse Association is attempting to develop the breed into one that is suited to modern equestrian events. So judges also watch how the horses walk, trot and canter, trying to gauge their potential for sports such as dressage.
It's a proud horse. It needs to be a proud horse. Black, of course, long manes and tail, full tail, the socks on the foot.
Understandably, Australian horses aren't of a comparable standard to those found in Friesland, Holland, the origin of the breed. However, judges say the quality of our Friesians is improving.
What I have seen now is that the stallions are better than the mares. And so you have a lot to improve here, but satisfied and better than 6 years ago.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
He's had just 12 weeks to get acquainted with his team, but John Fletcher says that's been enough time to get his squad physically and mentally fit for the court.
Over the last month or so, I've been really quite pleased. I think we've made some really good progress, and as far as the chemistry of the group goes, that's a really good level.
John will head back to his old stomping ground of Perth tomorrow, along with a 12-player squad, which will face some of the very women he helped coach in Western Australia.
It certainly helps us know what we need to look for as far as matchups goes this week, but having not seen them for 4 or 5 months, I'm certain there'll be quite a few changes to what they do as well now.
While the Orioles are tipped to be the big improvers of the competition this season, the Jaegers are also looking to make an impression with their fitness and strong attacking game. Friday night will be the first real test for the side, which boasts a combination of new and old faces, including captain Jane Olschwager.
Well, unfortunately, you can't have too many tests because there's only 14 games in the season, so every game really is vital. But it will certainly give us a good indication as to where we're at the present moment and what we'll need to do for the next 13 games.
Colleen West, NBN News.
Apparently we've all got to work together or we're going to sink, so everyone will have a lot of fun and do their jobs, and hopefully we'll get home dry.
It's one of the largest school productions in Australia, and many students who've performed in Starstruck over the years have gone on to have careers in showbiz. But it all starts here with hours of rehearsals. Today, students were put through their paces for just one of the show's 58 musical numbers. This year's event will feature 3,600 young performers from 135 Hunter schools, and choreographer Rachel Stark has to make sure that all those little feet and arms move to the same beat.
Oh, look, it's a challenge, but you have so many hundreds of kids who are here out of school for the day, learning an item, having a really good time. It's always a really good buzz at the end of the day.
The show will be staged at the Entertainment Centre next month, but there's a lot of work for these kids before then.
It is a lot of work. It's a lot of work for the kids, a lot of work for the teachers, because once they go to an item rehearsal, then they have to go back to school, rehearse, make costumes, put props together, organise transport, all that sort of thing.
Meantime, 3 slightly older local performers hit the Civic stage tonight in their second season of the Ultra Swing Lounge. Daniel Stoddart, David Andrews and Steve Hudson perform in the style of the Rat Pack with the help of a big band and some sultry dancers. The news reports over the past week have brought memories flooding back for Howard Patrick, who says he'll never go down a coal mine again.
I was buried from my stomach down. My head was out, but the rest of my body was buried. And, and I was screaming, get me out.
Howard was trapped for almost an hour after a collapse at the New Vale No. 1 mine in 1986. The event still haunts him, and the 56-year-old says he shares an affinity with the 2 trapped men.
I hate to think what they'll be going through when they see what happens when they come out. That's when it'll hit them when they come to the surface. Been that long down there, it will.
Howard says he won't get a good night's sleep until the Beaconsfield rescue is complete.
It's always on your mind. You never forget it.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
This was the welcome to Labor heartland for the minister at the helm of the controversial work choice reforms. There was only 60 protesters, but Newcastle Trades Hall Council blamed the small turnout on the federal government.
Currently, with the current law, you can't just walk off the job and come to one of these things.
17 uniformed police maintained a security cordon around City Hall, although the reception didn't faze the minister.
Well, there are more people inside than there are outside.
Protesters claimed Kevin Andrews was in Newcastle to explain the work choices changes to employers. However, the minister says he was helping Hunter Business prepare for a looming shortage of workers that is expected to affect the region's ability to compete when the baby boomer generation retires.
We expect up to 5,000 less people of working age over the next 5 years because of the ageing of the population. That's the real issue, and that's the best protection that these workers will have.
And Hunter Business already admits employing and retaining skilled workers is only going to get harder.
Business is dealing with skills shortages right now, and projecting forward with the population ageing, we're going to be in a worse position in the years to come.
One thing that does seem assured is that we will be hearing more from unions about the impact of work choices on Hunter workers.
And there's some key areas coming up, aged care, hospitality, etc., where they're just really getting a lot of examples up front.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
It took some effort to get the Red Bellies racing entry into the water today. But once in, there was no looking back, even if it was a training run. Catching the eyes of an inquisitive lunchtime crowd, this 6-litre monster never has trouble demanding attention.
It's an aluminium cat from Europe. It's canopied over the top, so as we sit in canopies there, in case we go over, we have oxygen on board.
At the same event last year, a small collision saw another entry go up in smoke. Remarkably, all swam away uninjured.
No, that's just part of racing. That was just one of those incidents that do happen, and from time to time, something like that occurs and we just all get over it and move on.
Move on they do. Bruce Sanders says his power boat is middle of the range compared to other contenders, yet his reaches speeds well over 160 kilometres an hour. They are the defending champions in their class and, hailing from Nelson Bay, represent the local charge.
We come in and out of the harbour 10 times, down towards Bar Beach area, turn around and come back. The spectators can stand on Nobbies, Queen's Wharf Brewery, all along, and just watch the whole action.
Racing starts at 12 noon on Sunday. For Newcastle heavyweight Patrick Kennedy, his ethos is simple.
Throwing a lot of punches and keeping a tight defence, just the basics.
A raw style of boxing he'll take with him to Melbourne tomorrow, his first fight back after a 12-month break from competition.
Pat's been around for a while, been in and out a bit, but I think his apprenticeship and that's been over for a long time, and I think he's quite up to the task.
And what a task it is for the Newcastle Hope. His Victorian opponent has won 8 fights from 8 starts. For Kennedy, though, a heavyweight title lingers in the shadows, and a win tomorrow night would set up quite a showdown in a month's time.
Well, I have to concentrate on tomorrow night's fight first of all. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. And then if all goes well, fight Colin Wilson up in Brisbane, and then big things could lead from there.
He's got to win tomorrow night anyway to be a worthwhile chance for the Australian title, I think.
In March this year, 31 state forests, mainly in northern New South Wales, were declared open for hunting game and feral animal control. Now a further 77 areas are also likely to be declared for that purpose, including the Wadigans, Barrington Tops, Pecolbin and Mile River State Forests. It means recreational shooters would be allowed to shoot feral animals such as rabbits, foxes, cats, pigs, goats and deer.
There's a number of issues related to feral animals preying on native animals and also competing with native animals for food and for resources.
We're outraged really that the Yemma government is allowing amateur shooters into our forests under the guise of protecting threatened species.
Conservation groups say feral animals should be controlled with baits, traps and professional shooting.
Shooting by amateurs obviously has very dangerous implications for anyone using the forest.
Well, that's just not true. The licensing system and the training ensures that we're talking about responsible hunters.
According to the New South Wales Game Council, only those shooters who have a restricted game hunting licence and who are members of an approved hunting club will be allowed to shoot feral animals in the state forests. These next 77 state forests are due to be declared for feral animal hunting on June the 9th. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
Almost 12 months ago, the Newcastle Port Corporation kick-started a campaign to promote their property portfolio to the business community. All up, they own 75 hectares of land. The corporation called for expressions of interest for 8 harbourside sites, some with deep water frontages. But apart from the 2 mega yacht builders, no one else has signed on the dotted line.
We've also had a number of companies show interest in properties, and we're in discussions with them. There's some land in Carrington, there's some land at Western Basin number 1, and we're in discussions with some people about that.
Sensation Yachts is now full steam ahead, about to embark on their first luxury vessel. They now occupy the ADI shipyard site at Carrington, and it seems Newcastle's deep water access isn't the only benefit.
The amount of people that have sent in their resumes has been overwhelming, and this is one of the reasons that attracted us to the area, was because we knew that they had the skill in Newcastle.
And in other harbour news, Gary Webb briefed the Property Council today about the latest on the Nobby's Headland development for a restaurant and accommodation.
Pleased to be able to say that it's moved through the approvals of Heritage Council, which now allows it to go through the approval stage of Newcastle City Council.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It's been pretty dry lately, but thousands of cars sprang up in the Tocal paddock today for the start of the annual field days. 450 exhibitors of all things rural are assembled, with 30,000 people expected to visit during the three-day event. At the Department of Primary Industries Science tent, you can bring in a water or soil sample from your property and have it analysed.
Deciding whether water is suitable for use for crops or for livestock, and also for soils, whether any fertilisers are required.
Bring in some sheep or cattle dung and they'll test it for worms.
Worms can adversely affect your animal, so they can cause things like scouring, weight loss, milk production can drop. So it's really important that people know what their worm levels are and then treat their animals when they need to.
You can pat a giant burrowing cockroach, meet the alpacas and find out the benefits of mohair goats. The Galloway's bull has a double coat of hair so it stays warmer in winter, doesn't grow as much fat and therefore is healthier eating. The latest range of tractors will get any red-blooded farmer going, and $500,000 will buy a nice little chopper to get you around the farm. The Tocal Field Days run all weekend.
Out of the supermarket and into the playground. Edgeworth Public's kindergarten and first grade pupils were given a bag full of healthy lunchtime food today, another campaign taken on board by Life Education.
As childhood obesity increases, we'll be making more emphasis, I guess, on good eating and making sure you know what you put in your body, including not putting drugs in there.
It didn't take long for these kids to realise that there's no such thing as a free lunch, the only condition being they eat it. OK, Shelby, tell us what you've got in your healthy lunchbox.
Apple, yogurt, rice crackers.
Changing kids' tastes will no doubt take time, but it represents a push across the state to eradicate unhealthy foods from school menus.
It's been interesting, yeah. They are getting more used to it now, and I'm finding that the profits in the canteen are still maintaining where they were before, so obviously it's something that's working well.
Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
There's genuine feeling in this international clash tonight. The Kiwis early in the week started it with their criticism of Carmichael Hunt and his decision to play for Australia. Now, Kangaroos coach Ricky Stewart returned serve, stating they're hypocrites for the fact that there's 5 players born in Australia playing for New Zealand. He also added that their potential playmaker, Benji Marshall, is a legacy in defence. Now, he stated at club level he's a target, but he's an even bigger one in the Test arena. Now, of course, there was comebacks from the Kiwis. Their coach, Brian McClellan, stated that the Aussies were disrespectful and narrow-minded for not being in camp in Brisbane to help promote the game. Instead, they stayed in their Sydney bunker. Now, this war of words hasn't got out of hand. In fact, I love it because in its own way, it's putting the spotlight on the Test arena. Expectations of a brutal encounter is building the image of the international game. Now, League has a strong domestic competition and an improving international game as well, which makes it uniquely placed. Now, their competitors, like the AFL, have a super strong domestic comp, but no international game, whereas Rugby Union has a very good international scene with the Super 14s and Test Rugby, but a semi-amateur domestic comp. Rugby League is situated to have the best of both worlds, and if the NRL's vision is right and the execution of it is right, they can experience major growth in both aspects of the business, and tonight's clash will go a long way to help. Straight a win, of course. 3 games on Saturday. I like the Eels, Cowboys and the Storm. Sunday, it's the Knights, Dragons, Roosters and Seagulls. Have a great weekend. See you next week.
A phone call from country coach Craig Bellamy last week prompted Matt Gidley to make one of his own today and stand down from representative football.
I just think this balances things out nicely. Representative football, is a great honour individually, but I just like to give the club a little bit back now and, as I said, finish here nice and strong.
First picked for country origin as a teenager, Gidley has tasted everything State of Origin has to offer, from winning titles to an historic draw and the odd loss. while as a Test player he enjoyed great success. Debuting in 1999, he has a World Cup to his name, along with successful Tri-Nations campaigns.
One of the greatest memories I'll have is being able to represent, both country, New South Wales and Australia throughout my career. But what's important to me now is, to finish off my career the next 3 years or so here with Newcastle.
For the record, Gidley claimed 11 kangaroo caps, the same number of times he pulled on a sky blue. With just 3 training runs to their credit and no warm-up match, injuries haven't helped Newcastle's preparation either. But wild horses couldn't drag Ben Donaldson out of this game. Used to success at this level, he isn't taking it for granted.
I take a bit of pride in representing Newcastle, and I've had a bit of luck there in the Newcastle team. So yeah, it'd be nice to bring the cup home again. Yeah.
The news on halfback Scott Briggs is all good as well, with the Macquarie playmaker past fit to play North Coast tomorrow at Port Macquarie.
We played him last week against Toronto, and he's a nice player to have on your side, and not playing against him, yeah, that's for sure.
Clubs playing tomorrow will do so without their rep players, but those able to back up from tomorrow's match will be free to take their place in games on Sunday, with Lakes and Macquarie sweating on several players getting through. A top-of-the-table clash in Newcastle and Hunter Rugby this weekend at University, where the students host Wanderers. While NBN Soccer League premiers Broadmeadow head to Edgeworth tonight, looking for their first win of the season. Described as Formula One of the sea, the Class 1 boats are like monsters of the deep. Hitting speeds often in excess of 200 kilometres an hour, they're enough to scare fish out of water. Sunday's race will be the first in almost 2 months in the series, and that may have been enough time for defending champions Maritimo to prepare, as they're yet to win a round this year. From boats to bowls, and no matter how you saw it, John Collins looked a sure winner in the final of the 54th Newcastle City Masters singles at the Lowlands Bowling Club when he jumped to a 10-0 lead. However, Bob Doust staged a great fight back to level it 25 shots all before going on to win 31-28. The redhead bowler also claiming the $2,000 winner's cheque. Meanwhile, no Hunter clubs are featuring the final series of the statewide Premier League at Windale this weekend. Play starts with the semi-finals tomorrow morning, with defending champions Harbord and the Hills having first shot at reaching Sunday's decider.
The Tokau Field Days today proved to be a buyer's market, with everything from heavy machinery and agricultural products to clothing and camper vans up for sale. In the arena, farm safety was the main focus. Quad bike safety was also on the agenda, with all-terrain vehicle demonstrations held throughout the day. Manufacturers blaming the high accident rate on driver error rather than machine design.
They are not toys, they are very dangerous. They're a lot of fun if operated correctly. It's a bit of a battle with a lot of our farmers. A lot of farmers will not wear a helmet, etc. But I think we're starting to get through to them that it is necessary to wear the right safety gear.
But quad bikes aside, the love affair with the mighty tractor was as strong as ever, pulling at the heartstrings of young and old. The field days continue tomorrow. Christy Carter, NBN News. Name your adrenaline rush and it can be done at the Glenrock Scout Camp.
There's canoeing, rock climbing, abseiling, flying foxes, jumping castles, bungee jumps, face painting, tattooing, candle making, damper cooking.
1,600 scouts and their families revelling in the sunshine as the camp literally swung into action. The camp promoting family unity and doing its bit to alleviate the childhood obesity epidemic.
We had some people watching the football match last night, of course, and as soon as it was over, the plug was pulled.
Meanwhile, cyclists, joggers and walkers will be able to push themselves 1.8 kilometres further along the popular Fernley cycle track, with it set to be extended from Whitebridge to Gateshead thanks to a $515,000 state government grant.
Perth has never beaten the Hunter Jaegers, but this was always going to be a night for the record books. The opening round saw the league's first male coach get a taste of top-flight netball, a debut overshadowed by Perth's towering attack. Coupled with missed opportunities, Perth's height advantage hurt Hunter, with the Orioles enjoying a 20-point buffer at the break. Caitlin Bassett just couldn't miss, but the Jane Altschwager-led Jaegers found some fight, and despite the result, it was still a night to remember for debutante Tiffany Lincoln. A night of firsts, Perth finally broke its Hunter hoodoo, the Jaegers on the wrong end of a record win.
It was a day to give thanks to fallen comrades and those who risked their lives by protecting property and residents. The unmistakable toll of the fire bell followed by a minute's silence marking International Firefighters Day, a tribute to firefighters across the world.
One of their members thought, well, we must do something to commemorate the efforts of firefighters, not only the firefighters that lost, but their families that go through the turmoil of having lost loved ones in fires.
Sometimes we risk our lives. When we think of the dangers and when we remember those who gave their lives.
The day held extra significance at Madawi, Port Stephens' oldest rural fire service branch. Firefighters unveiled this sandstone memorial to commemorate 60 years of servicing the area. Christy Carter, NBN News. Some would call taking to icy cold water in the middle of winter crazy, but not the Merewether mackerels.
It's getting down here with a bunch of fellas of a morning. Beautiful, refreshing water, though you don't believe me. About 15 degrees is optimum.
The swimming club today greeted the start of the winter season with bravado. The vocal cords warmed, so too was the belly, a glass of fiery muscat, a treat before the mackerels stripped to their speedos. But that was easily fixed.
It's not bad at all, Christy. It's about 20 degrees, I think, so it'll get colder though as the season goes on.
But that doesn't deter the mackerels, some of which have been taking to the icy baths for 30 years.
Why do you keep doing this?
Good question. Gets you out of bed of a Sunday morning.
Newcastle's working harbour took the day off, but things by no means stood still. Every move made by these monsters was being watched, and if you couldn't see them, you could certainly hear them. The field of 16 belted in and out of the heads, some of them at speeds well over 160 kilometres an hour. And of the big boys, Acme Racing looked right on target to win its first event of the season. But a developing nor'westerly foiled that. Before too long, the red flag was up and Acme's campaign all over.
Just took the corner too hard and barreled it.
It's the second such flip in the racing careers of brothers Andrew and Steve Searle.
This time I really thought that I was going to drown. That's how quick it come up.
Remarkably, both escaped serious injury, and once the vessel was back in the harbour, the race was rerun. The Port Stephens-based Red Bellies Racing enjoyed a breakthrough win in the 6-litre event. Series leader Simrad took line honours in Class 1, but a protest followed and it was later penalised for missing a marker. Maritimo was then promoted to first, handing its father and son team their first win of the season.
Australia's top dancers have pranced and pirouetted to perfection in the 24th City of Newcastle Classical Ballet Eisteddfod. Around 200 dancers aged 6 to 20 have arrived from across New South Wales and Queensland. Contemporary and classical pieces will be performed throughout the week-long Eisteddfod, which for many is a stepping stone to a professional career.
Fishermen and conservationists had something in common today. They were all outside the Port Stephens Fisheries Office protesting against the draft plan while the Minister was inside talking it up. The controversial parts are the sanctuary zones, coloured pink on the map, where fishing is banned and marine life is protected. Large areas within Port Stephens are included. Habitat off Broughton Island is earmarked. Virtually all of Seal Rocks is affected. About half of the Myall Lakes, Smiths Lake, as well as a section of coast further north around Cape Hawke.
The sanctuary zone is 20.7% of the park, and generally fishing activity will be permitted in the other 80% of the park. So it's a very detailed compromise.
We're not happy at all with the draft. It's like creating a national park and leaving 80% of open for logging.
I think any sanctuary zones here in Port Stephens is too much.
People have 3 months to comment on the plan, which can be viewed on the internet at mpa.newsouthwales.gov.au. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The manufacturing sector is one of the largest job providers for the hunter and injects around $5 billion a year into the local economy. But industry representatives from across the region were today warned about the effects increasing competition from China and India is likely to have on businesses and what they can do to prepare.
The key factor in order to be competitive is to skill their workforce. Not just about bringing on new apprentices, but of course that's going to be part of it, and having highly skilled apprentices, but also in upskilling their existing workforce.
A report collated by the Australian Industry Group highlights the need for manufacturing businesses to look for opportunities abroad. And that's exactly what Hunter company Amp Control is doing, last year exporting $15 million worth of electrical equipment into coal mines in China. It's hoping to expand that market further. Meanwhile, those in the manufacturing industry hope tomorrow's federal budget will deliver news they've been waiting for.
We need a restructuring of the taxes. We need to reduce the red tape. We need a greater commitment to education.
We feel very positive that things like encouraging people into the labour force by reducing personal income tax rates at the lower end are going to be really crucial factors in order to getting more people coming into the industry and participating.
Colleen West, NBN News.
Meet Sam. At 18 months old, he's one of the lucky ones. Rescued from a busy road with badly scratched eyes from a koala fight, he's been nursed back to health by Jill Taylor at her Port Stephens Koala Hospital. Dozens of the furry marsupials are hit by cars every year. Many are killed, so the success stories are savoured. After 5 months of care, Sam is back up to weight and ready to return to the wild. After a short ride in the car and careful selection of the bush near where he was initially picked up, it was time for this little koala to taste freedom again. He wasted no time climbing a gum tree and looked pretty happy.
Oh, is he what? He's climbing and spinning and jumping, and that's where they've got to be. They've got to be out in the bush. We can only do our part of our job to get them back out there. But it is amazing when you see them in their natural state.
A rewarding day for both Sam and his surrogate mum.
That's what we're there for. We're all volunteers, but isn't it absolutely marvellous to see the young ones go out there? They're well, they're healthy, and that's what we need for our koala colonies. We've had too many deaths.
A sight for sore eyes this morning, Clint Newton couldn't wait to get a look at his country jumper, but it took just one viewing of those x-rays to confirm the worst. Clashing heads during yesterday's win against Brisbane, a fractured eye socket will sideline him for around 2 weeks at least, with surgery still a possibility. For Anthony Quinn though, his first rep jumper is for keeps.
It's always in the back of the mind, but I was just more trying to concentrate on my own game and trying to play well for Newcastle, and I think it's paid off now.
While Kurt Gidley will partner old mate Brett Finch in the halves, state selection is now a genuine chance.
One step at a time. I think everyone would love to play State of Origin for Australia, but you've got to earn your stripes to get there. So and this is the perfect opportunity for it.
Along with their absence, the Knights are giving its Kangaroo trio most of the week off as well, given their recent schedule of 3 games in 7 days.
Got up about 5:15, I think it was, on Saturday morning, so I was pretty tired yesterday, yeah.
Winning, though, makes the exhaustion all worth it, with Danny Badiris backing up from a man-of-the-match test match performance with another strong showing yesterday.
To say, last week I'd have 2 wins and, we did it in pretty good style, so, I'm very happy with that.
Meanwhile, the Knights have 6 players selected and another shadowing for the state under-19 squad to play in the curtain raiser before Origin 1. Jim Callanan, NBN News. Back to work for the Newcastle Jets today, but only for around half the squad, with a range of reasons behind the later start for others. Captain Ned Zelich returns in 2 weeks from overseas, while 3 more, including some new signings, aren't being released to train by their current state league clubs.
There's quite a lot of issues, believe it or not. I would have liked things to be a little bit easier for me, but they're not, but nothing that I can't handle.
It should only take a few weeks to have his full complement together, with a new keeper to join the ranks in Les Pogliacomi.
He definitely shores up the goalkeeping department, but more importantly, he adds a lot of aura to our defence.
One of two players targeted overseas by the incoming coach. It's the second, Stan Lazaridis, that's the real prize. Back in Australia next week, Newcastle will sit down with the Socceroo and Premier League player after Adelaide has its shot at signing him.
If Stan's going to be fair income, I'm very confident that our negotiation ability will get us over the line.
Checking training facilities and building a support team is also on the new coach's agenda. While for injury-plagued defender Craig Deans, today was his first run since knee surgery early last season.
The Reserve Bank's latest interest rate move has added more pain to the budgets of homeowners and business owners, already groaning from skyrocketing petrol prices. And combined with high business taxes, you can imagine the Hunter Business Chamber is hoping for some relief tonight.
Business people will benefit mostly by if there's a tax relief, because the more tax relief there is, that'll enable more coin in people's pockets to then in turn go out and spend and increase consumer spending.
Those attending today's Newcastle Business Club luncheon had plenty to say on the federal budget. Apart from the day's events in Tasmania, how the budget should be spent was the next big issue on everybody's lips.
The number one priority as far as transport infrastructure would be the Seahampton to Branxton F3 link road, which is one of the biggest ticket items for our region and means so much to our regional economy.
I'd like to see money going into rail, transport, health, education, those sorts of things.
I think there's a real need for an injection of funds into the mental health system.
Federal MPs Sharon Grisson and Joel Fitzgibbon have outlined their top 5 wish list for the Hunter, echoing the sentiments of the Business Chamber. But member for Patterson Bob Baldwin refused to give his top 5, but did confirm that $5 million will be allocated to the 4th and final year of the Buckets Way upgrade. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. Mark Seary is one of many business owners who have taken a gamble, setting up a new restaurant on the boardwalk at Honeysuckle. He's operated the business for 18 months, but has already faced plenty of pressures, including a lack of car parks for patrons. And now crime is taking its toll.
Unfortunately, it's regularly that you wake up at 4:30 in the morning and you get a phone call from a security monitoring company that your business has been assaulted and broken into. It is devastating.
Almost all of the businesses along the Harbourside Strip have been stung.
We've had up to 14 break-ins over the last 5 weeks in the collective areas around here. It is a great concern to us. We've lost quite a substantial amount of cash and we're feeling quite vulnerable.
The latest break-in occurred early yesterday morning. Mark says a witness had reported seeing 4 people wheeling away his safe.
This safe was a 120 kilo safe. It was a professional safe. It was chemically sealed to the floor, yet they managed to get it in and out in a matter of 10 minutes.
I think it's an issue that they should think very, very carefully of. It could be the end of Derby Street as we know it.
At this section of the Hunter River at Mount Thorley, it's barely deep enough to wet the knees. If decent rain doesn't fall soon and the situation gets worse, irrigators will be left with no choice but to switch off their pumps.
We will struggle next year without irrigation, but at least I'll have some feed growing, I hope.
A third-generation dairy farmer, Bruce Russell, has only just got out of the milking game, deciding instead to run beef. In a month's time, his cattle will be eating newly planted ryegrass, and like others in the Singleton district, Bruce is growing extra feed now and exhausting his annual water allocation before the new financial year.
We will lose it if we don't use it. I've still got quite a nice piece of water left, and I'll be making sure I use every ounce.
The Department of Natural Resources delivered the bleak outlook to a Hunter Water Users Committee last night.
Some farmers might pull the pin and say, well, I've had enough. You can't blame them.
Farmers with debt will be hardest hit if the situation doesn't change, pinning their hopes on a break in the weather by July to ensure their water allocations continue. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
Both the Tigers and Newcastle have their share of players involved in rep football this time of year, and Friday's City Country match provides another anxious wait for respective coaches. It's a well-earned rest that Newcastle's mentor Michael Hagan has offered his Australian trio this week that he expects will play a huge role on Sunday's outcome. Todd Lowry has enjoyed a mixture of both hard work and good fortune this season that's ended up with him in the starting lineup this weekend against the Tigers. Starting the season in Premier League, injury opened the door for a return in round 3, and from there he scored 4 tries and continues to state a case to remain in the top grade.
Yeah, I don't think it was a spark I needed, but I mean it certainly showed me where you can go back to if you're not going that well.
Country reps Anthony Quinn and Kurt Gidley have both been named to play the Tigers pending Friday's match. Lowry starts for the injured Clint Newton, while Chris Bailey was named to make his NRL debut. The first thing that strikes you about sport aerobics competitors is their obvious fitness, followed by that incredible ability to smile all the way through a demanding routine. A national champion, not even the mountain of training can deflate 12-year-old Brianna Frost.
Every 5 to 6 days I do about 2 hours each training session.
For Alira Bull, there's no hiding this. Heavy strapping holds a badly sprained wrist in place, with that ever-ready smile working overtime to mask the pain. It's forced the 16-year-old to modify her routine in training, holding back her big manoeuvres until the first round of competition in the Ukraine in 8 days.
It's hard. You get that block in your head like, oh my God, will I be able to do that? But nah, I should be right.
After all the hours spent training, nothing will stop these two giving it their all on the world stage. And Alira can speak for both of them on that.
This is the biggest dream of my life. I'd love to win a World Championships.
For Newcastle 19-year-old Michaela Domkins, it's a career in basketball that she's pursuing with gusto. An AIS graduate, she's signed to play in the WNBL with the Sydney Flames, while it's a coming camp as a member of the Australian under-21s that she's really looking forward to.
We have it in Geelong in the June long weekend, so we get to have 2 practice games for the Opals, so it'll be good to see where I'm at compared to them.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
The parade began with fanfare, 90 floats passing hundreds of spectators who lined the street to catch a glimpse of the colourful procession. Its theme was Where Horses Reign, and they did, in every size and colour. It may not have been the Scone Cup, but the Kiddies Hobby Horse race boasted no less action. Across town it was the real deal, riders saddling up for the festival's signature event, the Camp Draft and Rodeo.
We've got a lot of good competitors here tonight and a lot of good stock and competing for the most prize money we've ever had.
The festival rodeo attracts the highest calibre of riders in the country.
We're lucky enough this year with our horse events, with our saddle bronc and our bareback ride. We've got three guys that have qualified in the World Finals in Las Vegas, which is as big as you can go in rodeo.
While most rodeo events get easier with age, it seems mastering the mechanical bull doesn't.
Yeah, it's not easy at all. Pretty slippery.
But it's tipped there'll be a few who'll find courage at the bar.
Get a few drinks in them, maybe a few wild ones get on, I'd reckon, yeah.
Regardless of skill, the festival requires this philosophy.
Go hard or go home, I think, here tonight. It's as I said, the competition's going to be very strong, and you got to be really going for it or you're not going to get anything.
Christy Carter, NBN News.
As they did last weekend, a 1-minute protest delayed the start of the match as players joined as one in an ongoing pay dispute with Netball Australia. But this was to be as close as the two teams got all night. Adelaide jumping out of the box with some great court coverage to take control. The home side just kept the foot down, scoring almost at will, while restricting the Jaegers to just 7 first quarter attempts on goal. it got harder to watch in the second. Adelaide's lead blew out, while Hunter was forced to work for everything as the hits just kept coming after half-time. Nat Medhurst shot at almost 90% for the Thunderbirds, while Kristen Heinrich was almost as accurate in a game that they always had in their keeping. At 63-28, it was all over, a record loss to Adelaide and the Jaegers' second worst ever.
New South Wales Rugby wishes to advise that Wendell Saylor has been stood down from rugby indefinitely, pending an investigation into an alleged serious breach of rugby's code of conduct captured both under New South Wales Rugby Union and Australian Rugby Union. At present, due to legal confidentiality requirements surrounding the incident, we're not able to give details of the actual alleged breach, but I can assure you that it's one that New South Wales and ARU view most seriously.
New South Wales, in particular the management here, has taken very swift action with this, and I think it's something that is very important. The minute that we became aware of this alleged breach, Wendell was immediately stood down, and over the past 24 hours, the #1 priority has been to manage the team's preparation for tonight's game.
I think everyone could imagine the state he's in at the moment. We are concerned for Wendell, but our primary concern is for rugby and New South Wales Rugby and Australian Rugby.